Today's webinar is obtaining the best return on investment from your search experience. I am going to take you through our solutions for enabling you to get a return on your investment for research solutions. So as we're looking at kind of the goal of this presentation, it really wraps around what are the factors which impact the cost of conductivity and searching research when knowledge professionals and all levels of researchers are searching for targeted content. Many times we spend a lot of effort for the power users or a core group of users, or potentially we might have different groups or industries within an organization. Say you do both pharmaceutical searching as well as patent-based searching or petroleum and allied health. So when we're talking about the cost impact, it's not just siloed by some of our traditional power users, but when you look at all of your research needs as a whole. We also want to make sure that we're looking at what is the cost of bad practices or research when that's brought into the company. Do you consider things like what is the cost per user hour? What is the cost per research or resource that you've acquired, whether that resource is being used or not used? A couple of the other questions that we want to try to answer in the time that we have is, are you comfortable with the solutions that you're using today? How about will those solutions change for tomorrow? And then ultimately, I think we'll find that something like a discovery service platform can really help you meet a lot of your goals, can reduce your costs, and provide a continuing return on investment. To help illustrate this, I'm going to conduct three typical corporate searches. I'm going to do a biomedical pharma type search. I'm going to do a patent non-prior art search. And I'm going to use an analyst report from Frost and Sullivan to show how, again, that research can be conducted within this parameter. But again, that might not meet all the needs of everyone on the call. I apologize for that. Hopefully, though, it will give enough of an indication of what we offer so that you can allow us to have a conversation and see how we can help you specifically. So a little bit about EBSCO while people are still signing on. We're one of the largest private companies in the United States. We have had years of experience when it comes to dealing with research needs for both for universities, corporations, and hospitals, as well as a lot of federal governments worldwide. A global organization. A little bit about myself. My name's Chappy Floyd. I am the Vice President of Discovery Innovations for EBSCO. My career kind of began after college in IBM in Northern California in the late 90s. I was involved in the mobile information society revolution. So that brought information to mobile devices. I did that as a technology evangelist with Nokia and through my patents for connecting devices like cell phones and cell phones to data. I'm really a great person to kind of tell this story. So we look forward to not only taking you through this, but also any feedback that you have. Now, today, we're really experiencing this convergence of data and ways to access it. So a lot of the experiences and expertise of EBSCO really make us the perfect provider of solutions to kind of meet this challenge for research, for learning, and for your information needs. As I mentioned before, while I'll go through a couple of demonstrations, I wanted to show this slide just to kind of indicate that we have multiple types of customers spanning multiple types of industries with multiple types of research needs. So again, I would hate for you to walk away from the subset of demos that we talk about or do today without the impression that we could help you as well. So the purpose for the webinar, what is the cost of bad practices or research that's brought into your company? How do bad practices occur? Can we calculate the cost of those bad practices? Is there a solution? And can we be successful in implementing it? So these are the things that we're going to talk to in the 45 minutes that we have. Some of these things are controllable, while others are not. So we'll try to be as open and informational as possible. But I think a good place to start is to really look at what is the cost when researchers not only are conducting information research, but the time spent either finding or not finding information. This is a pretty good statistic. If workers are spending over 1/3 of their time searching for information, they still have additional time where they have to analyze and do document creation for the content that they find. What we're trying to find today is a solution that can really help with that, as well as look at some of those non-quantifiable issues, like when you totally miss something like a key article. An example that I like to use for this when I'm speaking to customers is we have one of our current customers with EBSCO that shared with me, and they're a reference account for us as well, that shared with me a situation where they were looking for a specific piece of technology and had spent a good amount of resources looking for this information to go into a new area of business or to investigate the potential possibility, only to find out that they had already patented the information. But again, the cost of not having the ability to find internal information or be able to collaborate what one part of the organization had done with the other is what really caused that loss of generation of revenue. So let's put some real numbers behind this. This was a report that was conducted by IDC back in 2011. And what it showed was that there's a real challenge. There's kind of two sides of the coin. How do you find the information quickly and efficiently? And then how do you manage it? And if you're not finding it quickly, that cost can really add up. 8.8 hours per week is the time spent and lost for conducting research. If you look at, the average salary there of say $33.64 an hour, that's what's bringing this total to the $14,209 a year. Again, that would be per employee. That's 35.20 hours per month and almost 18 days per year of missed productivity. So the challenge here really is illustrating that there are these two sides of the coin. How do you find the information quickly and how do you manage it? I like to call these the 3 C's. How do you curate, collaborate, and then combine the relevant results in a methodology or a framework that can be cost effective and really offer you that return on investment? Is it looking at things like your subscriptions? Is it leveraging your resources or your databases? Are you having to jump back and forth through multiple platforms? These are the kind of things that help determine that number. So let's go a little bit deeper into this IDC report. Manage print and document services for controlling today's and tomorrow's information costs, done back in 2011. I like this quote here of by 2020, IDC predicts the amount of digital information will grow by a factor of 30, the number of files by a factor of 60, but the number of IT professionals, knowledge professionals, librarians, administrators, etc., in the world will only grow by a factor of 1.4. So here's the challenge. So if new sources of potentially relevant content are going to grow by a factor of 30, and this can happen a lot of different ways. So as an example, maybe as an organization, you acquire new resources, you grab new subscriptions or new databases. That might also require that new projects have different resource requirements than previous projects. So maybe you have a new resource, but it was actually specific to a project as opposed to the enterprise as a whole, at least initially. Potentially you have a merger or an acquisition of another company, and they have resources. How does all this get integrated? This really brings the challenge of how do you find relevant results when there are so many potential sources? A good example that I'll show you in the demonstration is the United States Patent and Trademark Office. They actually have a nice list of resources that they recommend you search when you're doing non-patent prior art search. How, again, do you get your arms around all that? So let's say that that's fine. You've identified a structure that allows you to have these premium resources. Maybe it's a web page or something of that nature. Typically, they're going to be housed off of a SharePoint, or maybe you have bookmarks, or people are kind of sharing them back and forth with other individuals. The obvious challenges here, though, are how is this brain trust of resources going to be maintained? Is it static? Is it dynamic? Who adds to it? Who's responsible for it? And most importantly, how do you ensure that users are able to find and search it effectively? As something gets added to it, where does it show? How do people know about it? A lot of my customers will say, well, those are interesting challenges, but right now our size is small. Our resources are limited. We use, one or two pretty effectively all the time. Well, and that's great. Uh, in those situations, while these first two might not be as big of a challenge, I think this third factor of growth for IT professionals impacts us all. It's always a challenge of how do you do more with less. And this is what's really driving the urgency for organizations to identify solutions that reduce costs and return the investment for the holdings that you have. But something else I want you to think about when we talk about IT or knowledge professionals or librarians, it's not just the acquisition of resources. A part of the consideration is training. How many interfaces do you access or require training on as new people are coming on or as people are transitioning? How much does the training diminish over time when you find yourself needing to access a resource again that you might not have used since the first day you came into the company? Or consider an employee who's moved from being, say, an intern in the engineering department over to marketing or product management or learning. How are they going to be able to build on their subject knowledge and incorporate this into the new job task without incurring cost of learning curve for accessing different resources? Again, I think this is all that comes into the concept that IDC is talking about. There's another quote in here that I think is really pertinent for this session. Creating, finding, organizing, and analyzing information is crucial to maintaining the health and well-being of a business. Making good business decisions and gaining a better understanding of customers and business conditions require monitoring, analyzing, and disseminating information from a large array of internal and external sources. So this includes employees, media, customers, shareholders, social media. Are your documents being advertised or cited or followed, blogs, wikis, etc.? So again, I like to kind of bring this down to the three C's: curate, collaborate, and combine. How do you manage this today? And how flexible are you for solutions to integrate a change if you have to make one tomorrow? Are you able to identify new resources, or if you want to ensure that existing ones are being utilized before people extend a search to other resources? How is that maintained and accessed by your internal customers, as well as how do you satisfy your specific needs from a budgetary perspective? Another piece to this that I find myself talking to a lot of customers about is, have you considered the challenges of global access? Today's world, we have certain resources that may be accessible by one group, but maybe they're not supposed to be accessed by a different group, either because they're not part of the budget or because there's other restraints or they're part of a different project. Or have you considered the demand of what's called BYOD? Bring your own device. This is where users are really requesting access to resources because they have a smartphone or a tablet or something of that nature. Does your infrastructure allow that to happen? Again, if your policy allows that to happen as well. And finally, after you've considered all of that, how do you quantify or validate your choices to make more informed decisions for the future? So IDC said here, crucial to maintaining the health and well-being of business. This is the challenge we want to really discuss in the time we have. So what does this look like? So this chart, I think, indicates some of the components that we're talking about from a research perspective. The creating the documents, the research, the curation of the information that you need to finally put the document together. Searching for documents. In many of the organizations that we talk to, they have internal content that was created specifically for projects and the use of the final result. Are you able to access and find that information? We also have the managing view and the merging of edits and comments. In many cases, you might need to engage a subject expert or the legal department or some other entity within your organization to really refine the final document. This also comes together in the time consideration. So I mentioned earlier, there's some things we can help control and some things we can't. Dealing with the problems of paper documents, while that's a factor, that's not something that's really controllable by a solution that we offer. So we don't really factor that number in to our total overview. So that's why instead of talking about 11.2 hours of wasted time, we use the metric of the 8.8. But obviously, these are important factors to discuss, not only as you're creating a solution, but as you're reviewing your solutions from year to year. Are you making these challenges smaller? So let's take a look at what people typically use today as resources for the first part of the three C's. Again, the curation piece. Google Scholar, PubMed, EBSCO or other research databases, and something like the USPTO are very popular resources in order to conduct research. But each of these resources have different challenges, different pros, as well as different cons. So as I mentioned, I'm going to take us through a couple of searches so that we can really hone in on, again, as IDC mentioned, this monitoring, analysis, and dissemination of information for a large array of internal and external sources. Let's see what that looks like. So typically, Google Scholar is a very popular resource. So I'm going to use that for my first scenario. This is going to be a biomedical pharmaceutical type of search. One of the nice pros for something like Google Scholar is you have a broad scope for your search. So if I type in a search term like heavy drinking and stroke, there is an article in the news about maybe 2 months ago now, where they were talking about some advances in the diagnosis of the effect of heavy drinking and stroke. So I started using this in my demonstrations, and I found it's pretty powerful to compare these different types of solutions and to really show the impact of conducting a search. So when I do this search in Google Scholar, first off, we get 11,000 results. And that's usually, again, one of the positives about people using this as a resource is they like the idea that you're being very comprehensive. But when I look at these results, you'll notice here my timeline is pretty antiquated. I've got 1999, 1993. While I am covering resources like JSTOR and publications like the American Heart Association, I have to do a lot more work before I can make this really relevant or useful. But one of the good things about it is it does cover resources like JSTOR. So as you see here at the top, I have a couple of tabs of those usual suspects that I'm searching. The nice thing here is I could reduce that because of the fact of using a product like Google Scholar. You have other options where you can have more clicks. I could go in and I could say, well, just reduce my searches to 2015 or to a different timeline. But again, that impacts the amount of time that I spend conducting the search. So for this reason, a lot of users will use a more specialized resource. So a good example of a specialized resource would be PubMed. If you're not familiar with PubMed, PubMed comprises more than 25 million citations in biomedical literature from Medline. So this is a great resource specific to the biomedical pharmaceutical industry. Again, one of the challenge here, though, is that if you want to do research for, say, engineering or petroleum, in the case you're a big petroleum corporation and you have both allied health requirements and you have engineering and research requirements, that's where this resource requires additional resources as well. But for right now, I'll go ahead and populate my search, the same search for heavy drinking and stroke into PubMed. One of the things you'll notice here is I have a much more concise set of results. I have 103 instead of the 11,000 that came from Google Scholar. And these results are very relevant. They're very specific. They're sorted by, in this case, by date. So I've got my 2015 information here at the top. So again, perfect resource. I like to call PubMed the gold standard if we're dealing with biomedical research for journals, articles, and information of that type. It gives you the ability to link out to full text if it has knowledge of your holdings information. So this can be a very valuable resource. A third resource that I want to show is an EBSCO database. So the difference with EBSCO databases is it's very, very laser precise. You would subscribe to a database based off of your area of interest. And in this case, not just biopharmaceutical journals, we're talking about Health Business Elite. It is a database that specifically focuses in and indexes content based off of, in this case, health information. So instead of the 100 resources that I have from PubMed, now I'm down to only 8. Now, what's really nice about these 8 is if I look at one of these, you'll see that we have this additional indexing of information that's added. Plus, in many cases, you can have full text. So now I can get directly to the article. But the difference between 8 and 11,000 can leave someone to think, well, wait a second, what am I missing? So the challenge is, how do you have your cake and eat it too? That's where something like EBSCO's Discovery Service can come into place. So if I go to EBSCO Discovery Service, for those of you that are not familiar with the Discovery Service, it provides a central index of journals, magazines, and ebooks. It can house and understand both your collection of journals, magazines, ebooks, catalogs, and other resources, as well as go beyond your collection. So similar to a Google, it can be very broad. Similar to the EBSCO host database, it can be very precise. So if I put in that exact same search into the Discovery Service platform, now I have a collection of resources that go beyond just my initial 11,000 that we found with Google Scholar. I've got 30,000 results here that give me really the broadest search possible. But when I look at these results, you'll notice that this first result is very precise. This is the same result that we have over here in my PubMed. Heavy drinking in middle age increases a stroke risk, study of twins shows. That same article is here. So the value here is that you're getting all the leverage of information from a precision perspective, but you also have the broadness that you need. Now, there's a couple other things that I should mention, and this kind of goes back to the IDC report. It talked about really being able to monitor and analyze the dissemination of information for a large array of internal and external sources. So within Discovery Service, one of the things that's very important to note is you have the ability to define a library collection. You can determine which sources you would like to search across, whether they're resources that you currently have, or maybe the resources that you're interested in, but you want to make sure that you're testing to see if the results are valid for your users. All of this can be configured within the platform. It also has the ability, which both Google Scholar and PubMed do not have the capability, of also integrating metadata from your catalogs or your internal documents as part of an institutional repository. So this can really be helpful. Again, if I take the 30,000 results that you just saw, but I decide that I want to limit that to just my available in the library collection, whatever scope you've defined that as. You have that ability within this product. So now instead of the 30,000 results, I now have something a little closer to 23,000. And I've weeded out those other resources that we don't want to waste time looking at. There's a couple other things I should mention about the product as well that really differentiate it from things like Google Scholar or PubMed. We have the ability to search within the full text of articles. So that can be really helpful to broaden your search, to go beyond, say, the title or abstract or subject terms. Maybe you're looking for a new term of art or something to that nature. So I have that capability, but in other cases, that might be a distraction. It might give me too many results. Unlike Google Scholar, where you can't do a lot from the 11,000, you can narrow it down by certain time frames, but that's really about it. You don't have access to any of the higher quality metadata here. Within Discovery Service, I can simply say, do not search within the full text. By unchecking that, now we go down to only 899 results. So now my terms of heavy drinking and stroke are being found in the title, the subject term, the abstract, or any author-supplied keywords. I'm going to turn off this available in library collection piece because I do want to get a broader search. And now I want to drill down between EBSCO Discovery Service and our results that came from PubMed. As I mentioned earlier, PubMed are the journals that are indexed in Medline, and Medline is, like many databases, available on EBSCO Discovery Service. So I have the ability here to very quickly say, I want to reduce my search just to those results that are coming from Medline. We have these facets to the left that give you a lot of dynamic capability to structure your search. I say dynamic because those facets are being driven by your results. So as you change your results, those facets change. Now in this case, I've reduced my results to the ones that I have from PubMed that are indexed in Medline. So again, you get the best of both worlds. I have the broadness of Google. I've got the precision in the indexing of PubMed, but now I have the ability to also have internal documents, catalogs, and information like that. Now, there's one other piece of this, though, that I don't want to neglect talking about. You'll remember that I used three sources. One of them was from an EBSCO host database. And again, this is a very relevant article when it comes to stroke. So maybe I want to see this particular article in my other resources. The reason why you would subscribe to an EBSCO host database is because as an organization, you've made an investment in the indexing and the full text capability of this particular database. And there's a lot of databases that you can choose from based off of your corporation's needs. But if you've made that investment, you want to make sure it's getting utilized. So this is a very good article. Heavy drinking may cause strokes. Let me go to my Google Scholar and let me put in that title and let me conduct a search in Google Scholar. Google Scholar does not index that article. If I go here to the advanced search, and just to make sure I didn't miss something, I want to take this term, populate it, search it in the title. These are the few options that you do have to search here. You'll see Google Scholar does not have or index that article. So this would have been missed. If I go to PubMed, while it has great indexing for Medline, again, there is a certain limitation to any singular resource. If I go into PubMed and search for that exact same article, it also does not appear. So that's where, again, we have to quantify the cost of not only conducting the search, but what information could be missed. Once we've created our search, the next thing we want to be able to do is that second C, the collaboration. I want to be able to reinforce the value of my product by making sure that we have both the structured search and a way to capture any of these results. What I can do with Discovery Service is I can have a My EBSCO Host folder. Now, if you've used the EBSCO Host platform before, you're pretty familiar with the folder capability. I can log in to my folder here. And this gives me a cloud-based way that I can take any of my results and I can very quickly save them for a lot of other activities. The other thing about the cloud that I want to mention is if you do enable a bring your own device or mobile access or global access to our platform, this cloud can be accessed from those different resources. You can determine whether or not that's allowed, but if it is allowed, this becomes a great way that people can start their work, say at the office on their desktop, but then continue that research outside of the office. So in this case, I want to take, say, two of these articles that I've created, and I want to save them to my PubMed targeted search folder. You can have multiple folders to define multiple projects. And what that allows me to do now is to go in to my EBSCO host folder. I can look at my PubMed targeted folder, and I can see those two articles. You can even annotate these articles. So for instance, if I want to go into this first one, and there's something specific about this article that I want to capture, maybe it's part of a project or there's just some information about it that I really want to make sure that I can maintain and hold on to, I can type in a note. This is a great article. And that note gets saved in a second location under my EBSCO host folders. You can see here to the left, we have our little note annotations. And this annotation will always take me back to that original content. So this is one of the great ways that you can collaborate this information, creating a note, Another way is by saving it to the folder. I'll show you a few more, but let me continue using a different type of demonstration. So if I go to the website for the USPTO, they have a document here that talks about electronic resources. Anytime you're going to do a search for non-patent prior art or information that you're going to submit to the Patent and Trademark Office, they recommend a variety of sources that you should conduct your search against. Sources like ACM, sources like EBSCO's ebook collection, Science Direct, IEEE, Novel, resources like Bio1, Hein Online, publishers like Wiley, JSTOR, which we mentioned earlier. So this can also be very time consuming if you're going through each of these resources separately. Well, with Discovery Service, you have got the ability to combine all that into one search interface. So using that same search interface I did earlier, this time I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to use under my folder what's called a save search. This can be really helpful in saving time as well as giving you the ability to reuse information over and over again. So you'll see here I've got this search called Dry Ice Patent Search. And if I go here to my Save Search link, I've already saved certain items for conducting this type of a search. I want to find a environmentally friendly way to remove graffiti or paint. So I've got this combined search here, and I'm going to retrieve it. When I do that, it reveals my search history. A couple of things. You can see that the previous searches that we've done in this demonstration are being saved. So I have the ability to add these to my folder at a later time or make changes to them. But what it's also done is it's added that previous search that I conducted a while ago. So a couple of things that are very important about this is whenever you're conducting searches, there can be a lot of items that determine your level of success. Do you have Boolean operators so that you're looking for not only the word remove, but removing, removed, removable, etc.? The platform can accept these types of wildcards so that you can ensure that your search is being defined in a way that's going to give you the most relevant results and the most comprehensive results. Right now what I'm doing is I'm reconstructing these three searches that I had done previously. So for a search for something like paint, graffiti, and the different spellings for the word graffiti, you can see that I have 15 million results. For my search for remove, clean, or blast, you can see I have 42 million results. There's a reason for that. It's because, like the USPTO recommends, in order to get a good set of results, you have to have a very broad amount of resources that you're searching across. But obviously, that's not going to be realistic to go through 42 million results. This is where this platform is very exceptional. I can take these separate searches, one for paint, one for carbon dioxide, and one for removal, and I can combine them. I can combine them using the word and. What this allows me to do is to take the best of both worlds, the broadness of searching through the full text, searching through the metadata, searching through the title, and going across all of these different sources of information, but then combining them so that I'm only seeing those that are relevant for all three search categories. It has to have the words paint or graffiti or the misspellings of the word graffiti, as well as those other items of interest. I'm going to collapse this search history here. So you can see now out of those initial millions of results, I have 114,000 results of interest. Now, if you're doing non-patent prior art searching, as an example, there's usually a date time frame that you're really concerned with. And in this case, I'm really only concerned, was there any conversation about this kind of technology prior to 2002? So I can use, again, another facet that's available in our platform. This is the time slider facet. And I can now reduce the scope immediately of my search just to those articles that meet my search criteria, combine across those different resources, still searching within the full text, but only from a period of time from 2002 back to 1821. Again, these are the recommendations from the USPTO. When I do that, a couple of things happen. One is I am able to see resources that I own as part of my result list. Again, this is a differentiator that you didn't have with something like Google Scholar alone. And then I have articles that are very specific for what I said I was searching for. Dry ice blasting for paint stripping and surface preparation. Now, while these might look like duplicates, they're not. As you can see here, you've got different dates. So these are different volume versions. But if I go down a little bit, you can start to see that you have a lot of great results for this dry ice in paint stripping procedure. I do want to remove the full text from this particular search. I want to show you how the product does have the breadth to do a large scope, but again, depending on your need, that might become a distraction. I always have to reiterate that because different users in your organization absolutely have different needs for the information that they're going to search. And sometimes it's very much a challenge to give that kind of resource that can be so flexible and forgiving. If I'm a legal person, not the engineer conducting the search, I might really want to hone in on just those articles that are extremely specific, while the first ones were relevant. Now you can see, in addition to these multiple volumes that we had before, I've got some articles that are extremely precise for what I'm trying to find, how to remove paint or other types of graffiti and information using just this environmentally friendly technology. So now that I've got this great list, a couple of these I really want to capture. So I'm going to capture this one, and I'm going to save this to my dry ice patent search. And I want to also capture this one here, the atomic oxygen. So now that I've captured those, I'm going to minimize this browser for a moment. I showed you earlier how we can take this and put it into our folder. I'm going to minimize it, and I'm going to go to a different browser. The reason why I'm going to this other browser is one of the capabilities you have in this platform is you can share information with others. So this is where the collaboration really comes into play if I need to talk to a subject expert about this particular technology. What you can see here is I have a shared folder which now has these two articles, Dripping Dry Ice and Atomic Oxygen, as part of that folder. This could be a totally different person within my organization. I have the ability to share information with them automatically. I'm going to back up. I'm going to go back to my original browser here. And now I'm going to add a third item, evaluation of supercritical. So when I add that, add that to the wrong folder. When I add that to the folder, again, what happens with Discovery Service is it's going to automatically share that through the cloud. So now if I go back to my other interface, I go back to my other folder, and now look at my articles, you'll see that we now have 3. So that's the capability that we have for also enhancing the collaboration part. So curation, collaboration, and now we're going to look at the final part of combining information. So for that, I wanted to use a report from Frost and Sullivan. I've got one here that I've used in the past, so it should allow us to very quickly go through these concepts. So this is a Frost and Sullivan report, Thinking Phone Networks. And as you're reading through the report, it's going to give you a lot of great information about the industry, the players in the industry, and things of that nature. Maybe my marketing department has gone through and they've marked up this particular document, and now I want to go through and conduct research based off of some of the information that they've provided. So in this case, I'm going to open it up so I can see the comment field. There we go. And I can, again, from maybe my subject expert, they've gone through and they've added particular pieces of this that I need to focus in on. Maybe I want to conduct a search for hosted IP telephony customers and companies. I need to get my arms around who are the players in this particular environment. So I can take this search and I can go back into Discovery Service. And now I can conduct a new search. And in this particular case, I'm only looking for companies. I don't want to include the full text. Because we have it set up as the default, we have both the basic search and an advanced search screen. And again, your users can go back and forth depending on their needs. But In this case, I want to turn off that searching in the full text. I can conduct my search. Now I have a list of not patent information, not pharmaceutical biotech information, but actually business information, all from the same interface. So I have a couple of different companies that are part of this IP field. Maybe I want to take this Jaha and I want to save it as something of interest. And I'm going to go to September 2015. And maybe I want this MTI. Once you've created these folders, you have a couple of options which I've shown you. You can share it. You can also create alerts and export this information as well. So if you've created a search that is pulling back the types of results that you want, again, if I go here to my newsletter and I look at my September 2015, I can create an alert so that going forward, as there's any new information about these companies or any new companies are added, it will automatically notify me. This can be a huge time saving to make sure that you're reusing any of the valuable information you've created. I can send that as an email alert, as an RSS feed, or as a permalink. Permalink is very helpful. That means that I can take this specific information, send it to someone as part of an email or any other type of a sharing methodology, and then when they populate it in, they're going to get the exact same result. This is, again, a capability that the platform has from EBSCO Discovery Service that's lost when you're looking at platforms outside of ours. The RSS feed is the way I prefer to get information. I get a lot of emails. So what I typically will do is I'll take any of these great searches, add them as an RSS feed, and now I'm able to kind of control that interaction. For me, that's a huge time saving. So we talked about the ability to curate information, to collaborate on it, and then to combine it. How does that really benefit us as knowledge professionals? Well, by having such a structure, you can now pull usage reports and analytics that can really show you not only how those valued resources are being used, but if there's other content that you weren't aware of that's really becoming valuable based off of new projects or your new organization searches. All of this is capable within this platform. And that's, I think, the answer to the question of how to ensure that you're obtaining the ROI for your investments. Just very quickly, this is two examples of how this has come to reality for some of our academic organizations that started using Discovery Service. Again, with our corporate organizations, we're usually not able to share these kind of numbers. But what you see here is that the ability to find information quickly before EDS and then after EDS. The reason why this increase is because instead of searching just IEEE or Science Direct or PubMed, the resources are spanning multiple, close to 30,000 resources, and can be limited either to your library collection, which you were or weren't familiar with, as well as other resources which, while they might not be part of your library collection, had relevant content. The last part of this is getting to the full text. So that's another time issue, is if you have found a relevant result, but you don't know how to get your hands on it, that adds an additional capability of becoming a very expensive research request. This platform enables you to identify your resources, your holding. How do you want to get to full text? Do you want people to purchase it, or do you want them to request it from the library, etc.? Those links can be part of the result list, and those links are controlled by the library. So at the end of the day, the real benefits that we bring to your organization is this increasing your visibility and footprint, not only for you, the library, but also for those resources that you've identified and established. Things like the RSS feeds and the alerts can really help in saving time, especially once you've spent the time either finding the relevant results or getting that information from your librarian or your knowledge professional. And they can really help you gain the competitive edge because, again, that person that might not be in the marketing group but needs marketing information for the specific project, all of those resources are at their hand, as opposed to having to get out of their traditional scientific database and go to something else for a non-scientific search.